Welcome to the Dealing with Divorce podcast, where we bring professionals in Georgia to help you learn how to deal with divorce before, during, and after. Today's guests are Brandi Steinberg and Steve Scott with IAG Forensics out of Atlanta. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Russell. We appreciate being here.
Yeah, so before we begin, can you just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves? Brandi first?
Sure. So my name is Brandi Steinberg. I am a CPA and I'm also a CFE, which means Certified Fraud Examiner. I have worked as a public accountant doing typical audits and tax and bookkeeping services for clients, and then I've transitioned into forensic accounting. So now all of my work deals with people in the middle of litigation.
How about you, Steve?
Well, my name is Stephen Scott, and I actually practiced law for about 6.5 years before starting with IAG, and I'm a certified divorce financial analyst, certified valuation analyst. Business valuation is often a big part of what we do, and I'm also a certified fraud examiner, but not to the level that Brandi is. So she does a lot more of that type of work than I do.
So y'all both do forensic accounting. What is forensic accounting?
Glad you asked that. A lot of people don't really have a clear understanding of what the word forensic means. People think it's black lights and blood splatters, but forensic is a Latin term which just means in open court. Excuse me. So anytime you hear forensic anything, it's somebody who does this in support of litigation.
Even I didn't know that.
We tell people that all the time in our CLEs and whatnot. It just means that you're doing your job in support of litigation, and that's what we do, is accounting in support of litigation.
So, do you have to be a lawyer to do forensic accounting? Are you a lawyer as well?
I am not a lawyer.
Okay, and so how do you become a forensic accountant then?
Our firm is a CPA firm. A lot of the people are CPAs. I'm not. I asked at the beginning of the hiring process, do you want me to get a CPA? And there's a couple of areas that you have to study in order to be a CPA that really don't come into play with what we do. You don't have to be a CPA and you don't have to be a lawyer, but having that legal background helps a lot with discovery issues and just procedural type things.
So there's many roads to get to be a forensic accountant.
Correct.
There are.
Do they coalesce into anything? Is there a test or any kind of licensing or anything like that?
I would say the CDFA tends to be more for divorce accounting, and I know you have that credential if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, any of these credentials we have which result in all the letters behind our names, there's a process you go through. Usually it's classes, a lot of times it's online, and at the end there's a test. So we are certified in these areas that we've mentioned, but there's not a overarching certification that you need in order to become a forensic accountant.
That's neat how there's many pathways to get there.
Yes. And I would think that both of our backgrounds, while they're different, they provide things that we can all use to help each other. So one thing that is positive about our firm is because we have so many different backgrounds, we can bounce ideas off of each other, and things I might have seen in my past on a tax return might help answer a question that Steve has now, and things that he's seen as a previous attorney might help answer a question I see now.
Yeah, we've got people that, one person whose background was in IT, and she's really good with database analysis, that sort of thing. Data analysis, I should say. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. The founder of our firm is Lori Dyke, and she came from a CPA background. She's been doing this for a long time. And Karen Fortune's also, she's our managing partner now, is also from an accounting background. One of our partners teaches accounting at Kennesaw, and in addition to working at IAG. So you're right, there are a lot of different paths to get here.
And so when would someone need a financial accountant?
So it depends on the type of litigation. The types of cases that Steve and I see most often deal with family law. So when people are going through a divorce, and if there's a business that needs to be valued, which I know Steve can explain in more depth, or if there are potential premarital assets, or if somebody has inherited property and we need to trace those to determine their separate property interest. Also, if we need to help calculate someone's income. Not everybody is a W-2 employee, So some people may say, well, I get rental income from here, or maybe I work in a barber shop, my income is not steady, and we can help them pull all of their records together to figure out what is a potential average income for you for purposes of alimony, child support, and there are several other things we can do as well.
Yeah, Brandi and I both primarily focus on family law, mostly divorce. We have there's basically two teams at IAG. One is the family law team, which we're both part of, and then there's business litigation team, which they work on civil litigation with businesses suing each other essentially. And you can imagine a lot of times it's like a partnership splitting, which is what a divorce is. You've got to take account of everything involved and value it and divide it up, and that's where we're able to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, people probably get some kind of clue that they might need your help. What are some of the behavioral or, I guess, document things that people can look for to think, oh, I might need a forensic accountant?
For us, divorcing people, once they realize they're getting divorced, might realize, well, wait, I had this house before we got married, or I had my 401k before we got married. So a lot of times it's identifying the premarital interests and seeing what they're worth, what that premarital interest is worth now. That's a big part of it. And, houses, like retirement accounts, we'll trace, it's the same sort of analysis. It's called source of funds. What's the source of the funds that paid for the house or were contributed to the retirement account?
And so that sort of analysis, is that necessary in all those types of cases or just when there's funny business?
What we're describing is, this is like the least funny business.
Yeah.
And this is pretty straightforward and normal. You've got an asset you had before the marriage, and you want to exclude it from equitable division of the marital assets because it's not marital.
Yeah.
But the funny business, we deal with a lot of that too. People will try to divert funds, hide them, misstate, misrepresent things, and we do a lot of that too. A lot of finding hidden assets and tracing.
Yeah. And sometimes it can just be maybe one party handled all the finances in a family and the other party just doesn't know who are our providers, what bills are we paying on a regular basis. I don't even know our bank account number, much less the balance. Do we have a brokerage account? Do we own more than one piece of real estate? Some people just, that task is delegated to just one party in the marriage. And so sometimes people, when they're going through a divorce, they just come in and they say, I don't even know what we own. I don't know if we have any liabilities. So a lot of times the work that we can do can also be educational for the client to assist attorneys with the discovery process in determining what assets and liabilities even exist, and then educate the client as to how each of those play out in terms of equitable division.
I heard you say you assist the attorneys. Do you help people who don't have attorneys? Can they hire you as well?
That's a good question. I would say typically we would prefer to work with attorneys, and if someone comes to us or reaches out to us, our first question to them is, do you have an attorney? If the answer is no, we are always happy to provide them a list of names of potential attorneys in their area that they could reach out to. And I know you can speak more to why we prefer to work with attorneys.
Not sure I can. It's just sort of a policy. Pro se litigants tend to be, maybe don't have realistic enough expectations, and the attorney is vital in helping them manage their expectations and proceeding on the right path. Attorneys know what to do, what motions to file, what needs to happen next, and we find that that piece it's vital. I mean, I think that we wouldn't I don't know that we would turn somebody away for not having an attorney, but we certainly prefer that they do, and we encourage them, because litigating is hard, and you don't want to do it without a professional at your side.
Yeah.
Is the way we kind of feel it about it.
And two, with our work, we would prefer for it to be protected under attorney-client privilege. So in the sense that there may be opposing counsel who wants to depose us or who wants to subpoena our work papers. We would like to have that engagement with the attorney to make sure that we're covered under attorney-client privilege, and the attorney can say, no, that work is not discoverable. We can discuss that at trial, when we provide you their exhibits. So we would like for our work to be protected by that, which is another reason we prefer to work with attorneys as well, I think.
That's an excellent point. The privilege between an attorney and client extends to us to some extent. Now, one time in 11 years, I've heard there's been a case in our office where somebody had to turn over all of their communications. That's happened once. And only, in case it ended up in trial, the other side can request it. But up until that point, we draft our engagement letter so that the attorney signs it and the client signs it. Mm-hmm. So we're all reasonably protected with attorney-client privilege.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so what geographic area do you serve? I know your office is in Atlanta, right?
Yes. Our office is near, I just say the Brave Stadium, Truist Park, for lack of a better reference. But we're on that side of Atlanta. But we serve all of Metro Atlanta as well as the state of Georgia. And also, since the pandemic, working in this industry has changed so significantly that now we're able to have clients in other states and, if needed, participate in mediation or trial or testifying by Zoom. And if we need to fly out to another state, we can. But we're able to now help with cases nationwide if needed. But obviously most of our cases are in the Atlanta area. Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say, although we have gotten more cases in Florida. I've worked on a case where the attorneys were in Las Vegas, the litigant was in California. We're able to work wherever we're needed. But
sounds like you're flexible.
We are flexible, but of course the heart of our business is right here in Atlanta.
And how many divorces have you done?
Oh, goodness.
At last count, I worked on over 300 cases.
And I've been with a firm less than Steve, and I would say I'm just under 200 right now. We're not saying that all of these cases we've worked on have gone to trial. Most of our cases, we're able to help the parties resolve either at mediation or through settlement discussions, but we also do end up in trial with some of our cases as well.
And so how do you help at mediation?
Well, in the divorce arena, we'll prepare a marital balance sheet, which is a balance, just basically a listing of everything the couple owns and everything they owe, all the assets, all the liabilities in one place. And then during mediation, we can show, we'll have columns like a proposed division. Husband in one column, wife in the other column, and we'll put this asset here, and then add it all up and see what the difference is. And there's obviously there's always going to be different types of assets. With the very liquid ones are the cash accounts, the bank accounts. Less liquid are investment accounts, brokerage accounts, things like that, and then less liquid than that, retirement accounts. Mm-hmm. A lot of retirement accounts haven't been taxed yet.
Mm-hmm. So penalties and taxes.
Yeah, well, it's a 401k. It comes out prior to being taxed. Mm-hmm. So those accounts, you don't want to say one person gets the 401k, one person gets the brokerage account, because that money in the brokerage account's already been taxed.
It's not even, yeah.
You got to be apples to apples.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's real property, and then if there's business interests, that all goes on the marital balance sheet too. And another way we're able to help is valuing that business. Like if one party in a marriage started a business during the marriage is entitled to share in the value of that. Mm-hmm. And that's another way we're able to help, is that we're able to put a value on the business and then think of ways that the other party might get other assets in order to offset the value of the business that the one party is keeping. Yeah. So it's mainly the proposed divisions and how to split everything up is how we can help it at mediation.
Yeah, and we're happy to participate in person or via Zoom. We've done both, especially since the pandemic, as parties' needs have changed. If they say we're all in person at one of the law offices, then we'll of course go sit in the room with our client And then if the parties have decided to prepare or complete mediation virtually via Zoom or another online platform, then we are then in a virtual room with our clients. And so we can have conversation with our clients while the mediator is in the opposite room having conversations there. And if we need to help our side to understand, okay, here's the offer the other side just presented, how does that flesh out, and what is the bottom line that you'll walk out with, and what's the bottom line that the other person will walk out with, we're able to walk them through that in real time, whether it's in person or virtually.
Real time is important because a lot of times at mediation, one side might bring a whole stack of new statements or documents, and we're able to update the marital balance sheet right there.
And so do y'all work for both spouses, or do you like split fees? How does all that work?
Sometimes. There are occasions where the attorneys will agree we need to hire a forensic accountant. We don't want to hire two forensic accountants, so they will jointly retain us, and then we're working for both sides. And that's another point is frequently there is another forensic accountant on the other side, and in the days prior to a mediation or a trial, we might meet with that opposing expert and agree on as much as we can so that we're able to narrow the scope of what people are fighting over.
Yeah, and with that, every case is so different, as you know. And so if the parties are highly litigious, or if one party is adamant that a certain financial account is separate and the other party is saying, no, it's marital, we rely on the documents to tell us what actually took place. So whether we are hired as a neutral or we're hired by only one side, we are relying on the documents to show the true story of what happened with the dollars and with the numbers. We don't ever advocate for one side's position over another, because that's not our role as an expert. We see that as the attorney's role. We're just here to advocate for whatever the numbers show.
Yep. Whether we're hired by one side, the other, or jointly, our value is our objectivity. That's the most important thing that we can be.
Yeah.
That's how you maintain the trust with the court.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's an important point too. The courts know us.
Yeah.
Gwinnett, Fulton, Cobb, we've been to all of them, and in a lot of cases we know the judges. We don't. There's no advantage to it. It's just that they're familiar with us. They trust our work. It's important to have a reputation.
You're not going to be voir dired as hard.
Maybe not. Sometimes, a lot of times, the attorneys will just agree to stipulate that we're an expert and they don't need to voir dire us. But sometimes they will.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
And I was going to say, according to the county we're in, if opposing counsel has not seen us before, they may want to make sure that we are able to do the work that we said we're doing. We're qualified to do that. So there are times that a new judge in a different county or opposing counsel who hasn't seen us before would want to do that process. And we're happy to participate through the voir dire process and make sure that we do get qualified to be an expert.
You'd mentioned a marital balance sheet earlier. Can you tell what that is? Is that a spreadsheet, or what is that?
Yeah, it's essentially an Excel spreadsheet that we've developed over many years, and the top part is the most liquid assets, and then they get less liquid as you go down, and then the liabilities are at the bottom.
And what do you need to be able to make one of those?
The statements, account statements. The real property is going to be on there too, so we'll want a value for the house. The best value is, well, short of selling it, is an appraisal. We'd like to have an appraisal, but oftentimes we don't, so we rely on online resources, which are plentiful, to give us the value, and then we'll get a recent statement of the mortgage so that we know how much equity is in the house. Any bank statement and bank accounts, we'll ask for current statements, investment accounts, retirement accounts. There's statements for all of it. And then we'll also, like for example, if there is a 401k where somebody's asserting a separate premarital interest, we will calculate what that interest is and put it in a column of, this is husband's separate property. It's not to be divided as a marital asset, or this portion if it isn't. So there's a lot of capabilities of the marital balance sheet that help us define what the marital estate is, and then we can go about helping them divide it.
And so if someone has something that they think's premarital, do they still need to give you the documents for that?
Yeah, the way we understand the law is that the person asserting the separate property is the one that has to meet the burden of proving that it's separate. So that's where we expect them, they might have to go back a few years and go to the bank or institution and ask for statements as far back as they can go. Some people have boxes of statements going back years and years and years. This type of analysis is often like, it's like doing a jigsaw puzzle where you're never going to get all the pieces. We hope we get enough pieces that we can paint a clear enough picture and estimate, if not calculate down to the dollar, how much should be excluded from the marital estate. But a lot of times there's missing statements, there's missing years, and we just have to do the best we can to support with a reasonable conclusion of what the separate property is.
So can you do anything to help during the discovery process to
Absolutely.
be able to get that missing information?
Yes, we're happy to do that. We have standard language that we can provide to attorneys to request the necessary documents from opposing party or request the necessary documents from our own client. And with that, we're able to list out, we need these exact months, these exact years of these different account statements, and we're able to spell it out and make it very clear for everyone involved. If there is a party who is unable or unwilling to provide documents, we're also able to provide the subpoena language necessary for a third party notice to produce if it needs to go to a financial institution or maybe to someone's tax accountant or to a brokerage firm, just to make sure we get what we need.
Yeah, we're always available to help with the discovery process. We've done these doc requests a million times. So, and when it comes to depositions and trial, we're also available to help. Like, here's what you want to ask the other expert, if there's an opposing financial expert.
Yeah. And you saying that, you made me think, if there's questions, maybe if one party was in more control of the finances than the other, and there's a deposition coming up for that client, we'll also be able to provide you with questions of, let's ask about these specific transactions to understand if this party had access to the funds, and we can see that these withdrawals happened, or we can see that a transfer took place. Let's ask that other party in deposition about these specific line items. So we're happy to give attorneys those types of deposition questions as well.
Okay.
So that the attorney doesn't feel like they have to understand the finances entirely. We try to take that burden off of the attorneys and off of the client to assist and remove the amount of stress surrounding the finances.
And what do you do to prepare for testifying?
That's the hardest part of our job. Seriously, when you, of course, we try to do all our work, as well as we possibly can and make sure that it's all correct and bulletproof. But when you're preparing for a trial, there's somebody on the other side that could very well be every bit as good at this as we are, and they're preparing to shoot holes in what we've done. So that's the most stressful part. I said the hardest, and it is, but to prepare for it, I'm laughing because I have prepared for withering cross-examinations in lots of cases, and it rarely gets to that point. It's like they always ask you something that you weren't expecting, or they don't know nearly as much about what we're doing as we do. So I've never gotten cross-examined as bad as I think I'm going to, but it's still the hardest part of our job. It's because somebody over there is every bit as good at this as we are, and they're trying to mess us up.
For sure.
It's stressful.
For sure.
As I'm sure you can understand. You've been in the courtroom. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are happy to...
Especially that first time I was in a courtroom. Boy, I was nervous.
Same.
But after about 200, you get a lot more comfortable.
Yes. Well, and you saying that, you're reminding me, for most of the clients going through divorce, it is their first time.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've learned over the years is just because we've all done this hundreds of times, that's not the same for the client. And so I always have to make sure that when I'm speaking to a client, I'm saying it in a way that they can understand, because every person is different. And the way I might explain a concept to one person is completely different than the way I'll explain it to another person. And when a client asks a question that to me seems like, oh yeah, that's a no-brainer, we've been doing this, I have to remind myself the client has never done this before. When a client says, well, you said we're going to mediation, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
We have to actually walk them through. No, that doesn't mean you're going to be in the same room with your spouse. You're going to be in a separate room from your spouse. You're not going to be across the table from them like we see in movies or things like that. It's just helping the clients understand reasonable expectations even as we go through the process.
So how can someone, I guess, know for sure whether they need your services? Can they like pay for a consultation with you?
We'll consult with them for free. We always want to make sure that we're going to be able to add value to their case before we engage with them. But we're happy to meet with them, and usually it's an attorney too that we'll talk to, and they'll call. They have a question. There's a pension. Like that's another thing that comes up a lot is somebody's got a pension where they've worked 20 years during the marriage to get this pension, and now they know they're going to have this much coming in every month for the rest of their lives. Well, a portion of that's marital, but calculating the present value of that pension is really speculative. So I bring up pensions because that's how it comes up a lot. Like people call us, hey, they've got this pension, we need a present value. And that's something we can do fairly easily and quickly. But then it might turn out that there's also a small business that needs to be valued. They've also got a 401k that they need to see what the premarital value is. It usually just starts with a question of, can you help us with this? And we will always talk to the attorneys and the clients for free before we ever engage with them to see if we can help them.
Yeah, and with that, we have on our website, IAGforensics.com, there is a little link that says click here for a consult or to reach out to someone. And whether it's the person going through a divorce or their attorney, they can fill out that little form, and it sends an automated email to several of us on our family law team to say, this is the client's first name, this is their phone or their full name, this is their phone number, their email address, and here's what they said they need help with. And like Steve's saying, a lot of times my spouse has a pension and we need to value it, we have mediation coming up, or we have trial coming up. They just give us the very broad strokes, here's the highlights, and then we have a phone call with the client and we say, okay, help us understand the financial components of your case. Do you have an attorney? That's always up at the top of our questions. And then, okay, let's get a Zoom call scheduled with you and your attorney. Let's really understand what's going on here and what the court deadlines are. Is trial tomorrow? Is trial 2 months from now? All of that matters. In a perfect world, we would love to be hired at the very beginning of a case, but we know that's not always feasible in every situation. And sometimes people don't even know they need a forensic accountant until they're so far into their case and discovery's already closed and we've already been to mediation once and we're not settling this, maybe we need to bring in an accountant. We are happy to come in at any point in the case, but it is on a case-by-case basis to understand what are the issues and how are we able to add value to help the parties reach a conclusion.
Maybe not happy. A lot of times it's like,
That's a good
a lot
point.
of times mediation's next week, we need you to do this or this. It's like, could you have called us a couple of months ago? It's a lot of times we get brought in at the end, and of course we'll help if we can, but it's always best, as Brandi said, to bring us in as early as possible. That way we can help with initial discovery. We'll make sure we've got the documents we need well ahead of any deadlines.
Yeah.
And if we figured out that they need a forensic accountant, is it going to cost them $100,000, $10,000, or $1,000? Which closest to which one?
Somewhere between 1 and 10.
Okay.
All right. Our standard retainer is 5, and that'll $5,000, and we will hope that will get us through the mediation. That's our goal. And then if most cases don't get to trial, but if we do have to prep for trial and testify, we may ask for more. But typically we take the retainer, set it aside, and then bill them as we go, and then apply the retainer at the end. If there's any overage, it goes back to them. If we, our engagements vary wildly depending on how much time we have to spend chasing down documents. If we had all the documents we needed, there's not much we can do inside of a $5,000 retainer, but the problem is that we often don't have everything we need.
Right.
And the less we have, the more work it takes to paint the accurate picture of the financial situation.
Yeah, and with that, it's also not in terms of clients who may be thinking, I only have a few $100,000 in terms of me and my spouse. So does that cost less than doing somebody's divorce who has several $1,000,000? That's not even a way to compare. So if there's a client out there that's wondering, well, I make less money than others, so therefore mine will be less involved. It's not necessarily dollar to dollar based on how we compare cases. It's how difficult going through the process is going to be. And we don't know how difficult each case will be until we get into it. Are documents readily available? Can we get to the files and the information that we need quickly? Do we need to be subpoenaing third parties or financial institutions? Are there going to be more than one mediation that we need to attend? Could there be a potential late case evaluation as well? And then do we need to go to trial? So every case is so different according to how litigious the parties are.
Yeah, that's what I heard you say. It's not about how much assets, it's about how much they're contentious with each other and how cooperative they are with one another.
Yes, yes.
A lot of times there's one party might think the other party is spending money outside the marriage, dissipating marriage.
I was just about to get into that. We've been talking about the premarital stuff, and that's kind of math and statements and very standard stuff. Tell me about the people moving around money. How do you find that?
Well, I mean, there's no magic database that tells us who's got what where, but...
and can we pause and park there just for a second? We want to make it clear. There is no magic database that exists that says, here's all of the accounts that Brandi Steinberg owns, and here's all the financial institution that she banks with. And if you go to any of these banks, you can pull all of her records. That database doesn't exist. And I think a lot of times clients go into a divorce thinking that a database does exist. And so they were like, well, my spouse is hiding money from me. You need to go out there and find it. I can't put in someone's social security number and then every financial account they've ever owned or currently have open just pops up. That's a violation of their privacy. I personally don't want my records out there. I don't think any individual wants their records out there. So just know there's no magical database. Keep going, please.
We have to rely on the statements that we can get, the statements that are issued to the people monthly, and you can find out a lot just by looking at them. People often don't look at them. Well, we do. We look at them. Mm-hmm. And we can see if there's transfers to another account that's maybe identified on the statement that we don't know about. If we get credit card statements and we can see spending and trips with a paramour, or, I mean, dissipation can cover a lot of things. They can be gambling, there can be drugs, there can be a paramour, there can be a lot of things. And if we are able to identify that they've spent money on one of these pursuits that's clearly outside the marriage, what we do is we quantify it, mm-hmm. and we put it on the marital balance sheet as something they've already received. Like, they've already received this portion of the estate, and this is what they did with it. So the other side should be compensated for their share of that money that's been spent outside the marriage. So that's something that happens quite often, mm-hmm. Not all the time, but of course, but something we definitely do. What we try to avoid is, okay, there's money gone. If it's just been spent, some people spend a lot of money just in their monthly lifestyle. And if it's looks like it's going to be a situation where the money's just gone, then we don't want to waste a lot of their fees running down a rabbit hole chasing money that's just been spent on marital pursuits. Of course, if there is dissipation or if they're trying to hide money in another account, that's where, we need to look deeper into this. But we want to avoid, and the reason I'm dwelling on this is because some people come to us and they really want to find out where the money went, and if it's gone, sometimes it's just gone. Yeah. Some of it's just they spent a lot of money on their marriage and on marital pursuits, and there's no help for it. The money's gone. Yeah. we don't want to spend a lot of time and fees chasing money that has been legitimately spent. And that happens a lot. We have to, it's kind of a thin line. We don't know when we start if this money's been spent outside the marriage or just on marital pursuits, but we can figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's where the educating the client comes in. Sometimes people just don't know how the money was spent, and it really may be you lived an extravagant lifestyle and didn't realize it, or the eating out, the vacations, it all added up.
It really does.
The private school tuition, it all added up over time. People just forget about it when they're looking at the totality of things. And I will say, along with what you're talking about with tracing assets, if there are transfers going out, maybe to another country, because we have seen that. Someone could have an account with Royal Bank of Canada, or they could have something in the Cayman Islands, they could have something in France or Nigeria. We may not have authority through the attorneys to go subpoena those foreign country banks, but we can at least quantify the dollars that went to those banks. So if we can say $500,000 was transferred to a French account or to a Nigerian account, we can at least put it on the marital balance sheet as this party made these transactions and has already received the benefit of it. No, we don't know what happened to it after that, but we at least know that $500,000 came out. Mm-hmm. And so we quantify what is available to be quantified.
So if money's taken out of the ATM every month, how much is higher than what's just normal pocket money? What do you see, kind of what raises your antennas?
Well, that's a good question. Withdrawals at a casino raise our attention. A lot of times there's withdrawals from a particular ATM over and over and over, and that might lead us to see where the money's going, what the activity is. I think we spoke once before about.
Oh yeah, I had one time that was we figured out where the ATM money, or the ATM he was using had a whole bunch of slot machines in the gas station that's where the money was going.
Yeah.
I think we spoke once before about a case we had where the husband there were numerous ATM withdrawals at every casino within driving distance, and they, you can tell it's like $1,007.50. There's $1,000 and there's the service charge, and there's a bunch of them. There's 5 in a given night in Biloxi or Cherokee,
yeah.
Vegas, wherever, and we see the money going out of the joint brokerage account. We never saw any coming back in. And, we were able to quantify that this guy, the withdrawals totaled $400,000 in 1 year.
Wow.
Just did casinos. But there were never any deposits. And that was the weird thing. I mean, I'm not the world's best gambler, but even a blind squirrel wins once in a while, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like money laundering.
Well,
basically.
it did. We didn't figure out what was happening until right before the trial, when the attorney called and said, "What are we going to do about all this memorabilia?" And I'm like, "What memorabilia?" This guy had a whole room in his basement full of sports and music memorabilia. I mean, this was expensive stuff like Babe Ruth signed baseballs, Ted Williams baseballs, Super Bowl ring, autographed football helmets, just tickets to the last Elvis show, autographed Beatles, memorabilia. And there's no way that it would have taken a team of experts weeks to put a value on all this. But this is what he was doing. He was going and gambling at the casino, then he would take the cash and go spend it on memorabilia and hide it in his house.
Yeah.
It's like having a safe with cash in it, but you can never be sure exactly how much cash is in there. So, we found out right before the trial what he was doing, and, he ended up getting to keep his memorabilia, but we put that $400,000 on his side of the marital balance sheet so that he had to compensate her with another asset. Yeah. But that's the type of thing we run into, and that guy was, that was pretty smart of him, what he was doing, and he was actively trying to hide money from us and from his wife.
And do you recall, did the judge give credit for that $400,000 that way?
It settled outside the courthouse, and yes, she got credit. And the thing is that we'll never know how much that memorabilia was worth. I mean, if you started taking it piece by piece and selling it off,
it might have gone up in value.
It could have been worth
Who knows?
much more, but we just don't know.
Yeah.
But at least we knew about it, and we knew how much he spent on it, and we were able to, get her half of that.
And they got it settled without having to pay someone to appraise it all, and who knows
Yeah.
how long that would have taken.
And
That's right.
And this guy continued to try to hide money from his wife. He was ordered to turn over the balance of one account, didn't do it till the last possible day, and the balance was $200,000 less than when the judge ordered it. So we had to go back and ask for the most recent statements, and then find out, yes, he had been taking money. He was saying it just decreased due to market forces. But then once we got the statements, which we needed the court to order him to give us, we saw that he had pulled out another $40,000 here, another $60,000 there, just trying to keep it away from her. This is one of the most egregious cases that I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
And this guy was actively trying to keep it all for himself.
Yeah.
Brandi, can you give us a war story of a good case that you remember and tell that story a lot?
Well, I was just thinking about the ATM withdrawals. This is not a divorce case, but it was a case where a son had taken money from his elderly father. That elderly father had not given him permission to take. And so now elderly father in his 80s has to bring a lawsuit against his 40-something-year-old son, which no family wants to go through. Mm-hmm. But in that situation, it was all ATM withdrawals, along with some other large transactions. But the elderly father did not have mental capacity to even know to go to an ATM and withdraw money, or to go online and make a transfer, or to invest in a type of commodity. And so the court in that case was able to determine that he did not have mental capacity for all these transactions, so clearly it must have been son. And so then it became a question of, did son have dad's permission or not? And that's where the judge had to issue a ruling to say whether or not he believed, based on the testimony of the parties, if dad gave son permission.
Yeah, whole phenomenon of gray divorce, we call it. People are getting along in years who decide they want to get divorced after 40 years, and the objectives are so much different at that point, because their income is more or less fixed at that point, but their costs could go up. Whereas young people getting divorced, their costs are relatively stable, but they expect their income is going to go up in the future, so it's a completely different animal. And we had one fairly recently where the husband was 92 years old, the wife was 88, and they were getting divorced. And we're like, after 60 years, why are you getting divorced? And it turns out, after we learned more about the case, the reason was, well, kind of twofold. One, the wife had outlived her retirement, and she needed to they'd been living separately for years, and he still had considerable assets, and she needed to get a piece of it. The other thing was his son and grandson and their families were concerned that when the husband did pass, everything was going to go to the wife, from whom he'd been separated for years. Mm-hmm. And then her kids would get all of his holdings. So they finally decided, the two families decided to go ahead and divorce after 60 years of marriage. And like I said, the point was, at the beginning, we didn't understand why. Mm-hmm. But after we learned more about it, those were the reasons. And it's sad, but they really needed our help to get this stuff sorted out, so that each of them had something to pass along to their kids.
Yeah. And you saying that, you're making me think of a case that I worked on a few years ago with one of our partners, Marty Varon, and Lori Dyke also was on this case. But when the parties were married, her dad gifted her 1,000 shares of Coca-Cola stock. So in 1983, this woman was gifted 1,000 shares of Coca-Cola stock. What I loved about this case is that she actually had the stock certificate from 1983 to show that it was dad's money that paid for it, and that it was made out for stock certificate in her name. And then we were able to follow the transactions going forward to understand that she did not make any additional contributions or purchase any additional Coke stock. She literally let it sit there. And of course, in the 90s and the early 2000s, Coca-Cola stock split multiple times. And this 1,000 shares of Coca-Cola stock in 1983 turned into 118,000 shares of Coca-Cola stock in 2021.
What do you think that was worth?
6 figures. I don't know.
A little bit higher. So in 1983, Dad paid $50,000 for those 1,000 shares. In 2021, it was worth $6.5 million.
Wow.
So it was 7 figures.
Wow.
She'd never touched it. It just sat there in the account and grew. Premarital asset.
Yeah.
Excluded from the marital estate.
Yeah.
And what would have happened if she didn't have that stock certificate? What would you all have needed to have traced that?
Without that certificate was the most important
that's
piece
gold.
of documentation, because with that we were able to say the stock did this throughout the years and it split this many times, and we were able to do an analysis to say, does it make sense that this 1,000 shares turned into 117,000 now? And the analysis proved that it did, based on how Coca-Cola stock performed over the years. Now, had she not had that, we would have had to back into, what is our current share? 117,000. When do you think you received these stocks from your dad? And then try to back into it. We could have gotten there in terms of we would have been using the same information that Coca-Cola and how it performed over the years, but we would not have had the foundation to help us feel 100% confident in it. And so there would have been room for the other side to poke holes in it. And the judge may or may not have agreed with our analysis without that document, and it could have went either way. But with that document, we were able to prove 1,000 shares truly did grow to 117,000 all on its own.
Your question reflects the vast majority of the cases we get like this, where
Yes.
we don't have that stock certificate, and we've got to, we're of course entitled to rely on the representations of our client, but if they're challenged in court, we have to present a reasonable case. We have to present this, yes, we don't have these statements that go in this period of time, but we know that the account grew from this to this, and that's consistent with the S&P 500. We can get around having gaps in our document trail, but it sure is nice to have that golden ticket,
Yes, for sure.
Saving some documents could save you millions of dollars.
It could.
Be organized.
And I have thought, in terms of retirement accounts, if someone says, I had a retirement account before I was married, I believe I was making whatever the IRS maximum limit was. I was just doing whatever they would allow me to contribute throughout all of the years. What we would then request, if they don't have the account statements going back that far, we would say, well, let's go online now, pull your Social Security earnings statement, your benefit statement, and then let's look at that. One thing that the Social Security Administration does is it tracks what our income is that is reported on our tax returns every year. It tracks all of our W-2 income and everything. And so then we could go back in time and say, well, if you made $50,000 in this year, according to the IRS website, the maximum allowable contribution was this percentage. So now this would have been your potential contribution during that year, and then we would go from there.
Yeah.
So we can piecemeal things
Mathematical
together.
inference of-
Yeah. So we do that when we have to, but again, like you said, golden tickets are beautiful, but they are few and far between.
Well, if somebody needs your help, how can they contact you?
Steve at IAGforensics.com. This is Brandi with an I at IAGforensics.com. Our website is obviously easily accessible.
We'll get the website and the link in the description below.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And we have a phone number that people can call. If they leave a voicemail, one of us will call back within the same day. We've got a large team that works on our family law team, and we're always available to call back. And then if they send an email, like through the contact us on the website, one of us will respond to that as well.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
This has been the Dealing with the Divorce podcast. See you next time.